Hey everyone, welcome to Fresh Takes Events Unscripted. I'm Jennifer Selly, and on today's episode, we've got Kieran DiEmidio, who is the founder of 301 Walsh Events. Before launching her own company, she designed events for multiple powerful businesses: LinkedIn, Upwork, and NYU School of Law, to name a few. Now let's get into it. Well, welcome, Kieran. Thanks for coming on and joining us and talking today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Super excited. Yeah. So, for the first time, for people getting to know you, how would you introduce yourself?
My name is Kieran. I have been working in events for just under 20 years. I have had so much experience in just all over in the tech world, in education, in weddings. It is something I really love. It kind of feels like what I was meant to do. And I recently, in the last 2.5 years, started my own very small boutique events agency, kind of helping a lot of really small teams kind of build and scale and support their event programs. And I live in Austin, Texas, where it's really hot right now. And yeah, that's I'm kind of an events girl.
Awesome. I love it. I fell into the event world completely, and it has my heart. I tried to leave a little bit during COVID and immediately came back. I was just in Austin for SEMA last week. It was warm. It was warm.
It's really hot.
It is. I love Austin. So, let's rewind. Kind of, how did you get into this? Was it an intentional move for you, or did you stumble into it like I did?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of both. So when I was in college, I worked for a nonprofit all 4 years. I had like a work study program, and they were a very small nonprofit. And as I'm sure everybody knows, they need people to just do anything and everything. And so it was a nonprofit that helped kind of artists make a living off their art, provide, art programs in Austin. And like one day I would be pumping bottles of paint, and the next day I would be writing a press release. And one of the things I really loved to do was help planning their events. I thought it was, a really great match of, the creative side, like right brain, left brain, creative side, but also budgets and templates and stuff. And I really like both of those things, right? I get bored if I'm like kind of on one side or the other. And so after, years of kind of working on events with them in college, I started to get some internships and some things that were very specific to events. And then my kind of goal was to really find that after college. I moved to New York and worked at NYU Law School doing events for them. And so then I've been really working in events ever since.
That's awesome. So you mentioned NYU Law School, and I know you've also done things with LinkedIn and Upwork. So you've had some really kind of incredible roles that have shaped your career. Are there any lessons that you take or have taken from those that really have helped shaped kind of how you move 301 Walsh now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of part of the reason why I wanted to start my own business, because I have all these years of experience, and when the lessons would take longer than we could possibly have, because as so many people know in the industry, really, it's very difficult to teach somebody. It's kind of one of those things where you have to kind of live it. I will say, just having, things go wrong. I think that probably the biggest lesson is something is always going to go wrong. No matter how much you plan, no matter how prepared you feel, something is always going to happen. Something is always going to go wrong. And it's your job to kind of pivot and prepare enough so that thing is really small, right? That's what when I had a team, I used to say, something's always going to go wrong. Your job is to make sure you minimize whatever that thing is as much as possible. And so I feel like that's just years of kind of learning and being in it. I think that's the most important thing, to kind of getting in and really developing planning events as a skill, which is definitely a skill. It's something that takes a while to kind of develop. So I feel like I could go over like a million different things that happen, but
that's so true. It is totally something that I almost say like you're born with it. Like you get it, you understand, but those lessons are key. The millions of lessons that I think we've all learned. It's super interesting and fun. And you never forget them. And that's
a great point. Like one thing happens to you, an example I would say is just something very specific. Like I was doing an event one time, and the room was set, and at night somebody from the cleaning crew came in and they cut the cords with their cart. So like the AV company came in and they were like, I like don't know what happened, but they cut the cord. And so it was like such a scramble. So like now in my mind, whenever I'm like walking around and I see a cord that's not like super taped, I'm like, tape this up right now, because you never make that mistake again, especially if it's something that is kind of catastrophic as far as an event goes.
So true. If it's impactful, you don't forget it. And it's so funny now. I like teach these lessons to the newer generation as they come up, and I'm like, don't do this. Lesson learned. I've already learned it once. You don't need to learn it again.
Because they're going to learn their own lessons about different things that you didn't learn your lessons on. So yeah, for sure, having, being able to kind of build on that as you go and you make mistakes is I think something that makes you better at your job as you get older.
Definitely. What is kind of a single moment for you that in your career, like, this is why I want to go do it on my own? Like, this was a pivotal moment.
Yeah, I think that but there's so many different moments, because they're like, imposter syndrome is real, right? Every time I'm like, I'm so great at this, I'm going to be wonderful at this. When I was working at the nonprofit, really just kind of getting to be around people, and events they're so synonymous with joy, in my opinion. Like most of maybe not all events, but it's just like one of those things, like gathering people together, having them learn. Like I feel like I'm a lifelong learner. So I really loved that, even just starting with the nonprofit. But over the years, just seeing programs, especially as I moved into, kind of the SaaS software world, where events are such a driver for sales and have an impact. I did at one of my first kind of tech jobs, we did a seminar across the US and Canada. And, just seeing how like $1 million deals would come in, and the salespeople would say, yeah, we had a great conversation with them at this event, or we signed the contract at this event, to see like, wow, my little tiny events job is having like a multi-million-dollar impact on the company's outcomes. And so I think like being super organized, working with, all the people within the organization, particularly sales and the field teams, is kind of those moments where I'm always like, oh, okay, I'm doing something to help my organization. Or now, I'm doing something to help my clients, because they're a small business and they're maybe a smaller company, and they're getting these deals that are propelling them forward. And, even now, just like having clients hire a full-time person, right? Like if I do my job correctly, events go well, they hire a full-time person, and it's a little sad because I don't get to work with them anymore, but it's so awesome to see like the belief of their executive teams and saying like, yeah, we need to have somebody full-time on this. So
that's making a huge impact. Like it's kind of like bittersweet, because yes, like they're moving on, but you've made such an impact for someone in that corporation that they are willing to take that on. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it's happened a couple of times already, and I haven't been doing it that long. So that's really kind of always, maybe that's not the best like business model, because you end up not having those clients, but it is something where like, it feels like, especially now, there's such a movement towards events that like helping people kind of hire responsibly, and then helping them hire this full-time person is so enjoyable for me. So it's been really awesome.
That's amazing. I love that. What's a project or event that you'll like never forget? One that was like a huge turning point for you?
Yeah, I feel like, again, it's just there are all these moments where I'm like, the moment that I'm like, do I want to do this? Am I even good at this? And then you have something that like kind of pops up. I think in multiple, in my job at Upwork and my role at my last job at Gradle, a couple of these, positions that I've been in where like we have built a flagship event program from the ground up. That's happened to me a few times in my life. And that's a really cool feeling as well. Cause as anybody listening to this knows, like building a large like users conference or a flagship event from the ground up is really difficult. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of details. Likely people don't understand budgets and numbers. So they're like, let's throw this amazing flagship event. And then you give them the numbers and they're like, whoa, that's so much money. So I think a couple of those moments have been huge. I also worked for LinkedIn for a while, and I actually did our sales kickoff and club events. So one of my jobs was to lead the sales kickoff event that was happening in Asia Pac. And that was a huge change for me because, I had never really done big events like that in Asia. I was on calls at like 11 o'clock at night, which that in itself was exhausting, but they had there's very different, cultural sensitivities and ways of working. And it was a really big budget. And quite frankly, I didn't have a ton of support from my management. So having, being able to do that at such a large scale, we did the event at Marina Bay Sands, which was also really cool to do an event there. So I think that was another moment that I was like, it was really hard. Like I had a lot, I was questioning myself a lot, but then coming out of it, I was like, oh, this was great. This was
I got
wonderful. I'm
this. See,
exhausted,
that's
but
that
this was wonderful.
imposter syndrome, like
Yeah,
sneaking in that it does.
exactly.
And then
It
you kill
still
it.
does. I mean, how long I've been doing it, and I'm like, am I good at this? I don't know. It's hard to tell.
You are, yes. It's just part of the world we live in with imposter syndrome,
It
but
really
we
is.
all are meant to be here and doing a great job. Kind of talking about that event makes me think like logistics and things. So, what's a logistic that you think makes the event really great in your eyes?
I don't. It's hard to tell because it's such a combination of things together. I mean, I think there's things that like you I think even on the wedding side, right? Like I do weddings. It's like there's so many different components, but like if you have amazing food, but your bar isn't full and hopping, then like it's just all of those elements together, I think create this perfect, combination. And that changes with whatever event that you're doing. I think the biggest thing is obviously that connection, which is really the point of events. If you're not kind of designing towards that, it feels like, whatever your ulterior motives are, sales or selling, whatever that is, it feels really obvious. So I think, designing for that connection, really making sure people can connect with you, connect with your company, connect with your other clients, connecting, if you're at a wedding, connecting with each other, celebrating. It's like, you have to always kind of keep that in mind because there are definitely events that feel not human. And it's like, why do that? You could just like go on a meeting and feel kind of robotic. So I think having, really having that at the center of what you're doing and, making sure all of those, the biggest thing, I think I put this somewhere in my notes down here, but so it might come up again, but the biggest thing is like being intentional with what you're doing. Cause if you're just like throwing shit at a wall, it's probably not going to end up working. Like the way that you would throw an event for one group of people is not the way that it would work with somebody else. And we see that a ton now with like the Gen Z, like the way that they work is so different than a boomer or a Gen X so I think it's like really understanding that before you go into an event.
All of that is so true. And it's, human interaction, like especially with AI now and like how that's coming on board, it makes what we do even more important in my mind because without human connection, there's really nothing. And you've got to design your events to make sure that it is intentional. I love
I've
that.
been saying it that like I should coin this. Events is
You can
like
coin it
kind of
now.
it's like kind of the antidote to AI, right? Like we're in this world where everything just becomes like AI and robotic and you don't need to interact with people as much and you could like build an entire app all by yourself without ever having to talk to another human being. And I think all of that stuff is going to be amazing and it's going to change the world, but I think that if COVID showed us anything, it's like people are so desperate for human interaction. And so I think events are like kind of the balance to that, and I think that's why we're seeing like such a huge burst in people wanting to throw more events and to lean more into that because it does bring in the human element that it's only going to become more important as time goes on.
It's so true. I think, yeah, COVID definitely taught us we need interaction. And I think I'm seeing it more and more now with, AI and how it's coming on board that we need more of these experiences that are human interaction that are definitely more like intentional. So I agree with all of those, all of those big points. So what are some trends? I mean, we kind of talked about AI, but are there any other trends that you are seeing that you're excited about?
Yeah, so I talked about this a little bit. I talk about this actually a lot, but I talked about this kind of before. But I think the idea of adopting, like the people adopting the experience, is something I'm super excited about. I think back to some of my previous roles where most of them were in a B2B environment, and I would throw these like off the wall suggestions, and they would be like, "That's really for a B2C type customer event." But my retort would always be like, "Well, we're not selling to a company, we're selling to a human who works at a company. So like, why not also play into, their interests and what are the things that are going to, bring them into a booth or make them feel like, wow, that was a great experience." So I think that has become really huge. I think like people are using experiential now as like, basically in my mind, that's the same as events. Like, I think I've always thought of those things as two in one. And I think the younger generations all expect an experience, right? Like maybe you could go, maybe older, myself included, like you could go to a sales kickoff meeting and just go sit in a ballroom somewhere and it would be fine. But I think as the younger generations come up and they've been raised on, social media and all of this kind of stuff, like I think that they expect something more and they need something more to like retain information and feel invested in their company, or if they want to purchase something, they want to know more than just like the specs of the thing that they're purchasing. They want to know about the company, they want to know about what are their stances, what do they believe in. So I think that makes me excited, because it feels like it's much easier for me now to like persuade clients of mine, like, hey, let's do something really fun at the booth. Whereas before it was like, hey, we're just going to do a backdrop and call it a day. And there's just, you can't do that now, right? You just don't stand out. And why spend $50,000 for you to just have people walking by you versus like really drawing them into something. So I think that is a big one. And I think like micro events too, I think that's a huge trend right now. That's like small dinners, small events, little seminars. And the reason that excites me is because marketing has a tremendous amount of pressure, especially now with like AI, where people are like, you could replace your entire marketing team with this thing.
No, you can't.
That there's so much pressure on marketing now that like, those big leaps of like, I'm going to throw a huge flagship conference. I still think those work. I still think those need to be done in a way that is still experiential and feels like kind of fun and new and fresh. But I do think the micro events are a way that marketing teams, event managers in particular, can see massive wins with like just not as much budget, because our feet are always being held to the fire these days. And so I think the people that are kind of like leaning into that a little more and partnering, that really forces you to partner with sales. And so I think that relationship, especially in the SaaS software world, is like very important. And so I think that is kind of exciting too, to see that like, I wouldn't say it's a reversal, but it's a recognition of like events come in so many different forms. And if it's not working for you in this huge multi-million-dollar budget, or, doing a Super Bowl event or something like that, there's still a way to make it really impactful in your business. Mm-hmm. So I like that too. That's an exciting thing as well.
It's so true. I think now as they're like building their budgets, it is like a dynamic between like, okay, we want like the flagship, but we also need for these like mini things. It's just such a dynamic that they're trying to figure out now.
And we were talking about sales, right? Like the sales, a sales touch point is like, nobody just like goes to an event and is like, all right, I'm going to buy 55 of your software, right? That's not how it works. It's a long process, especially when it's a higher, it's different obviously when it's, when you're purchasing something B2C type, purchasing something physical, but like in these big business types events like that nurture has to happen. So I think having different steps where you can, connect with John Smith from this company. Maybe he comes and he sees the big flagship event and he thinks it's awesome. And then you follow up with him at a small dinner in, wherever, New York City. So I think that kind of stuff is like, that's how you think, I think strategically about really having an impact with your events, not just like once a year, but like throughout the entire year.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to have you rack your brain, because you said something earlier about off the wall ideas that you used to pitch that would maybe not get approval. What were some of those off the wall ideas?
I can't even remember. I have always wanted to do, I don't even remember if I ended up revealing this idea, but I have always wanted to do some kind of like water, like when you go to a children's museum and like they have like the water fixtures and there's like little ducks floating around and stuff like that. Like I think at one of these events, I don't remember which role it was in, where I was like, we should have like a big it had something to do with water. Like I think it was the software was like used in water processing plants. And I was like, we should do like a big water tank in the middle with like ducks and stuff. And you could see whatever prize you won on the bottom. And like the look was like, that's the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life. And I was like, but think about how many people would come up to that booth and like, I want to see what I win on a rubber ducky. They would take it for their kids. Like it just seemed so like unnecessary to the team at the time, but in my mind I'm like, that would play now. Like I think I could get somebody to do that now, because that's the kind of stuff you need. It doesn't cost a lot of money to like do a water table and fill it up with water and put rubber duckies in it, branded rubber duckies in it. But like if my choice as a person at a conference, at a trade show is like, do I want to go to this rubber ducky water table, or do I want to just go to this like backdrop table? I would probably go to that one. I want to see what's going on over there, right? So I think it's like, just things like that, or even just like we should go to a dinner at like the trendiest restaurant in New York City. And, you know, well, we don't, that's too much money. We don't need to do that. Let's just go to this run of the mill steakhouse, like stuff like that, that I think historically was like, we don't need to spend money on that. Let's not worry about it. And now I think it's a little bit more of like, okay, yeah, how can we make this an elevated experience to like really kind of stick in people's minds?
That's so true. I know. I've always wanted to do like a breakfast at Tiffany's event at Tiffany's, and then do like a designer show like during Fashion Week. It's one of my bucket lists.
It would work so well.
It's so easy, but like it's an experience. People would love it. People would definitely be there. So kind of talking kind of on the path of this, like outside of work, is there a personal experience or hobby that like has shaped your creative approach? Because you obviously have got some really good ideas.
I think like one, I love to travel, and I think just travel in general, no matter what you do, is super inspirational. You know, you're just like thrown into places. Like one of the first places I went when I was younger in Asia was Thailand, and I was like, oh, what is happening right now? Like it just was so different, right, than what our normal lives were. And so I think traveling and meeting people and experiencing things, and I also love to learn. So like reading books and, you know, watching movies and like all of these types of things are, you know, I probably think a little too much. Like I think my brain's maybe a little bit too active, but you know, something will just pop up. And I just did a booth with one of my clients that was, they had a tagline that made me think of a record store. So we set up their booth like a record store. So it was like their brand, but in a record store version. We like printed fake records and had like a record player there, and there was a meeting room in it, and it had kind of brick. It looked very like New York kind of brick. And it was really because I was at a record store, and I was like, oh, this would be a really cool idea for them because their tagline kind of like matches with that. And so we did the booth. It honestly was so great. And so many people came up and they were like, this booth is amazing. Because again, it wasn't something like your brain just is like going to erase 90% of a booths in a trade show floor. So like do something that's going to have an impact, because I also think having any event, any of those types of things are like, that's a touch point for the brand. And so if your brand is like, hey, we're really boring, we just like kind of, you know, have a backdrop. But if your brand's like, hey, we have a record store and our people are super fun to talk to, like I think that goes a really long way, like whether it's overtly or like subconsciously for people.
It totally is. I agree on the travel. I actually have like a travel tattoo arm that I've added to. So I have Ireland, Italy, and Portugal, and I'm headed to Europe in a few weeks and doing Germany. I have Germany, London, and then I'm going back to Portugal, but I'm getting those three in a few weeks. God. So
it's so fun.
Yeah. Completely agree on the travel.
You're inspired by your tattoos by traveling.
Yes, very much so. What's something that you still want to like achieve in your career?
I do think, you know, one of the things that was really surprising to me, and I should have like understood this, is, you know, I went from having a team of 3 people in my last role to, you know, really working with myself and clients, but also like contractors from time to time. And I think like I do really miss having the team. I think the team aspect of events is like, we all know, like putting on an event of really any scale is a team sport. And so I think I didn't realize how much I would miss that. So hopefully at some point adding a few members, obviously in this world, it's kind of nerve wracking because you're responsible for someone's, you know, salary and livelihood, and things are a little bit crazy right now. But I also would love to, I've been talking to a few people actually that are like, where does one go to learn how to do events? And I think part of it is like getting those experiences. But I also have, you know, really toyed around with the idea of like doing a course, just like teaching, a course to people who like either they're in their careers and they don't know how to take the next step, or, you know, they haven't had the opportunity to learn certain things. I think back to, you know, I wish someone had told me really early on, your best friends in events are going to be your salespeople. So whatever you can do to go and be friends with them and, you know, figure out how they think. That's the other thing. Like, a salesperson probably not thinking in the same way that an events person is thinking. So I think just things like that, being able to teach those things and give like really solid, you know, templates and things like that there is a lack of that happening right now. And so I think maybe that's something in the future I'd like to do, just because I do like to teach. I do like to kind of like help, younger me probably needed a little bit more guidance in that time. So like being that, I think for somebody else, I think is huge. So yeah, maybe.
I completely agree with the teaching element. I completely fell into this world and didn't know what I didn't know. And yeah, I wish younger me would have had someone that was probably a little bit more guiding and helpful. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. And so also sometimes people like have been mean. Like sometimes I've had bosses who are really mean. And I'm
Yes.
like, and I don't
And they
know enough
expect
to
you to
be
know
like,
it. And you're like,
yeah, and I don't know enough to be like, well, I don't know how to do that, and I didn't know the questions to ask, and like, I think one of the things for like when you're doing business events, B2B type events, is so often someone is like not providing you with a goal or a like here's how this event will be successful, but then when it doesn't hit that goal that they never told you about, they're like, well, why didn't it hit this goal? And you're like, you literally never told me that was the goal. So I think, teaching people to like prod that type of stuff from the beginning is like, if somebody doesn't give you a goal, you need to make a goal, share it with them, and then get that confirmation, because that's happened to me a lot, where I was like chasing something that I didn't even know existed, and then when I didn't reach it, it was like a problem, right? So that kind of stuff for sure.
that's, yeah, that's key. I feel like we've had the same path and I didn't know it until now.
I feel like a lot of us probably have had this path. It's not an
Yes.
easy one.
Yeah.
Events is so fun, but I think USA Today had ranked it like in the top 10 most stressful jobs, because it's very stressful. So I think, any kind of guidance you can get from people is always really helpful.
Yeah, I try to help. I am actually part of Site, and I'm in charge of the young leaders for the Midwest chapter. And I love like mentoring and guiding them because you didn't know. And I'm like, here, let me help you share my path and at
And
least
so
what I've
often,
learned.
no one has like most of my roles, I've been the only events professional in my job. So
And
going
that's
to those
really
people,
hard.
yeah, and going to those, and that's how I feel like I learned so much of it, is because I had to be strategic and I had to do all of the all the tactical stuff too. And I couldn't really go to my like head of marketing and be like, how does this work in events? Because they're like, I don't know, I'm not an events person, go figure it out, like it. And so I think having that kind of community and having maybe like a little bit of structure, even again, just like templates and how to use them and things like that, are just like, why do we force people to figure that out on their own when we can share that? So
I love that. If you had to sum up events, what they mean to you in a few words, what would they be?
yeah, I just think that the connection thing, right? Like we're all just kind of craving that. It's never going to go away. And I think, finding a place, whether it's like a personal, you inviting people over for dinner, or a business event or a wedding, it's like finding that humanity in, in our everyday lives. I think I put somewhere when I was thinking about this, like having a unique experience or a magical experience. Like so many of us live our lives in this like kind of robotic monotony. And I think every time I host an event, I'm like, how can I make this feel like just a little bit magical, so that, people are like thrown out of their like just robotic 9 to 5, go to the gym, come home, put the kids to bed, all of that kind of stuff. I think the events those are the things people remember. Like when you think back on your life, you're like, I remember this person's wedding. I remember this birthday party I went to. I, went to this really cool conference last year, and that's what I remember in my personal development. So I think those are the things people remember. And so I think that connection and creating like a magical experience from it is I think that's what drives me to like want to keep doing it.
I love that. Well, I clearly love magic. So I'm going to have you rack your brain here for some kind of imprint related things. So at Imprint, what we do is a work hard, play hard mentality, and we get to pick a fun title. So I am the pixie dust guru here at Imprint, which means I get to bring magic to all of the events and sprinkle the pixie dust in. So if you were to have a fun title, what would it be?
I don't know how fun it is, but I feel like Keeper of Chaos would be how I would, say, which is kind of crazy because I think maybe in my personal life it may not match. But when it comes to work, I feel like I have this, when it comes to events, I have this calm. And I was thinking about it because my sister got married recently, and she had a very nice wedding. And my mom was like, wow, you answered everything so calm. Like she was almost surprised that like I was able to like handle everything. And I'm like, I think I might be like a little bit of a different person when it comes to that kind of stuff. So like, being able to, handle all the chaos that comes with events. There's so many people involved. There's so many questions. There's so many things that could go wrong, is like, I think, and I hope, maybe not, maybe they would tell me otherwise, but with my clients and my colleagues and in previous roles, like, I want to be that person that like you look to and you're like, oh, she seems very calm over there. So I feel like everything is, it's like with the flight attendants, when you're going through turbulence, and the flight attendants, they're just like vibing, like they're not worried at all. It's like you look at that person and you're like, oh, okay, this is normal for them. They feel okay about this. That's kind of what I like to be in an event, where like people are not looking at me thinking like, oh my God, she looks like she's so stressed about something, that they could look at me and be like, wow, she looks weirdly calm right now. I feel like I could be calm about this.
That reminds me of like ducks when they're swimming, because on the surface they're like just chill, swimming right along, and then underneath their feet are like going crazy. That's
another reason for the ducks in the water booth.
Who knew ducks were going to be the theme
Important
today?
topic. Yeah.
So we're kind of coming to the end, but I've got one more question really. And what is something that I didn't ask, or that you've never been asked, that you wish you would be asked more about?
Maybe this is more specific, like working with someone on an event, but like I feel so strongly that any goal in this world can be accomplished or further moved along by an event. And I feel really want to brainstorm with people of like, here's this really unique problem we're having. How can we host an event to match it? Because I really feel there's so many like standard ones, like, oh, you want to sell something, do this kind of event. You want to meet your clients, do this kind of event. You want to, promote your product at Austin City Limits, do this type of event. But like, I really want people to think outside the box and think like, I have this super unique problem. How can we solve this with an event? Because I really feel like there's an answer to that for everything.
That's so true. There really is. So now that you've put that out there for everyone, where can we find you that people then come find you and ask these questions? I'm
always yammering on LinkedIn about stuff. So there, but also my website is 301walsh.com. It is like it's an address of my grandmother, which is where is kind of the first place that I really like enjoyed having everybody around and like felt that connection. And she passed away like right before I started my business. So 301walsh.com. And yeah, I just like love the challenge that comes with it. And if people are, we've all been there where we're like, I need help. Like I can't do all of these myself. And so, love kind of being able to jump in and help people. So yeah, find me there.
Awesome. I love that. I love that story about your grandmother. I also have a tattoo from my grandmother after she passed away. So
you too. There's one right here. Can't really see them.
Yeah, it's on my wrist as well.
Well,
I love that. This was so much fun chatting and connecting. I think that's what we like to do, obviously, in this world, sure. But taking it to kind of a different level and doing it on this platform was really great today. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.